If eating healthier is one of your New Year's resolutions, you may want to take a look at the new dietary guidelines released by the Department of Agriculture.
It looks very different than past recommendations of the so-called food pyramid. That new guidance reworks advice about limiting saturated fats, saying instead of limiting them outright, Americans should choose whole food sources of saturated fat like meat, dairy, and avocados. News Channel 11's Karen Jenkins spoke with a local dietitian to hear their thoughts on those new recommendations. Karen?
Yeah, guys, remember the old food pyramid where we could eat all the breads? Yeah, well, that's been outdated for a while, and it's been replaced by My Pyramid and My Plate. And now the government, under the new Health and Human Services Director Robert F. Kennedy Jr., says it's all about eating real food, with protein leading the way. The Department of Agriculture has released its new set of dietary guidelines, and while many want to compare it to the food pyramids of years past, that initial pyramid was actually replaced more than 20 years ago. The most recent government recommendation until yesterday was My Plate, which shows images of food groups proportioned with an emphasis on grain and vegetables. The new 2026 guide says prioritize vegetables and protein. Tri-Cities Registered Dietitian and trainer Tyler Mitten, who's currently working in Virginia as a performance dietitian for the Navy SEALs, agrees with that change.
To me, that is one of the best pieces of change with this. I do think protein is important at every single meal. Protein is going to help with insulin sensitivity. Protein is a very thermic macronutrient, meaning you burn more calories digesting protein than you do carbohydrates and fat. Maintaining muscle as we age is literally what can help keep us healthier longer and keep our metabolism going. Adequate protein is how we maintain this muscle mass or build more if we need to.
Minton applauds the recommendation's emphasis on whole foods and limiting highly processed foods, added sugars, and artificial additives. But he says the recommendation of, quote, limited alcohol consumption is a little too vague.
The healthiest amount of alcohol to drink is none. The second healthiest amount is as little as possible.
Overall, Minton says the new recommendations are encouraging and will help to combat what Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. calls a national health emergency, citing nearly 90% of healthcare spending is on chronic diseases, much of which is linked to diet and lifestyle. But still, more can be done.
So I do think it's important that they're constantly looking for ways to improve this. And I do think this one's a move in the right direction in a lot of ways. There's still just some things that I think could be perfected in how you explain to people how it can be used.
Now, one of the issues many have about eating more whole foods is the cost, because, sometimes it can be more expensive than those processed foods. But I'll share some tips Minton has for eating healthier for less on our website at WJHL.com. Sarah?
Karen,